邊個嚟請佢？我哋而家請證人入嚟。
Should we invite the witness into the meeting room, please?
首先歡迎。
I'd like to welcome you all to the Select Committee to inquire into the background of and reasons for the delay of the construction of the Hong Kong section of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Express Rail link. This is the sixth hearing. With us for today's hearing is Mr. Lincoln Leung, CEO of the MTRC. We have agreed with the request of Mr. Leung for someone to be accompanying Mr. Leung. We have the legal advisor, King & Wood Madison's retained legal advisor of the MTRC, Mr. David Bateson, principal legal advisor, Mr. Bao, general manager of MTRC, Ms. Mei Wong, and also manager special duties of MTRC, Mr. Ng. I'd like to draw your attention that the accompanying individuals will not be speaking at the Select Committee. Just a reminder for the witness that the Select Committee doesn't enjoy the powers and privileges under the Power and Privileges Ordinance Section 9(1), Cap 382, so the witness will not be protected by the powers and privileges. In the course of an inquiry under Section 18 of Cap 382, all the questions put to the witness, if the witness were to produce a false reply or produce false, untrue, and fabricated and falsified replies, it would constitute an offense. But I'm convinced that the witness will be assisting our work sincerely. We have put together the practice and procedure. I'd like to draw members' attention to a couple of points. Under Cap 382, the powers and privileges for members will only be applicable in the course of the hearing. All members, including members not belonging to the Select Committee, should refrain from making any comments relating to the hearing. And also for those members of the public and the media in the public gallery, any disclosure of the evidence given at the public hearing will not be protected by Cap 382. So if necessary, friends of the media and members of the public should seek your legal advice regarding their legal liabilities. Later on, I'll be calling upon the witness to confirm the written statements and the documents produced for the committee and have them incorporated as evidence of the Select Committee. The Select Committee has also decided that for documents that can be made public, they will be posted on the web for public access. I now formally declare the hearing open. Mr. Leung, on the 29th of June 2015, you produced an English version of your written statement to the Secretariat, and on the 7th of July 2015, you produced the Chinese version of the written statement, and that is tabulated as W9C. Will you formally produce the evidence and the document as evidence? Yes, Chairman. For the sake of the members of the public and the media to follow the proceedings, at their request, we will make public your written statement. Do you have any supplement? Chairman, members, thank you very much for supplementing further information. I must apologize. My Chinese is not all that good. In order to accurately reflect my points and to answer members' questions clearly, with your indulgence, Chairman, I will switch to English. Mr. Leung, that would be fine. You can choose to speak either in Cantonese, Putonghua, or English. In your replies, we do have simultaneous interpretation. Since this is an open hearing, there are members of the public and there will be broadcast. My questions will be put in Cantonese. I will stick with Cantonese in my communication with you, and you can freely choose either Cantonese, Putonghua, or English. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman and committee members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to say a few words. My written statement submitted to the Select Committee covers the following areas relating to your investigation, namely, firstly, the corporation's role and responsibilities under the entrustment agreements signed with government. Secondly, our management systems and procedures set out in the corporation's Project Integrated Management System, or PIMS, which has successfully delivered a number of new rail projects in Hong Kong and beyond over the last 20+ years. As you know, the corporation is required to follow our system under the entrustment agreements for the Express Rail Link project. And thirdly, the extensive channels of communication with government throughout the Express Rail Link construction and the monitoring mechanisms in place. Before I take your questions, I would like to briefly touch on a few points. First of all, I would like to apologize that MTR did not, until April of last year, provide the government, the Legislative Council, and the public with an updated assessment of the completion date of the Express Rail Link project. As a result, our announcement of the delay in April 2014 understandably caused public concern. The question that is often asked is, why didn't we provide an updated assessment at an earlier time? In April of last year, I was serving as the corporation's Deputy CEO, primarily responsible for continuing the growth of our businesses outside of Hong Kong. But since being appointed as acting CEO in August of last year, and later as CEO in March of this year, I've spent a lot of time focusing on this important project. Having talked to our staff and outside experts in the construction industry, as well as visiting the different work sites, the answer to that question has become clearer to me. Although delays to particular contracts were well known and communicated, we were too optimistic on the overall ability to catch up with the original timetable. As we all know, the Express Rail Link is a large and immensely complex project. It is the world's first all-underground high-speed rail project. At the terminus site in West Kowloon, in the heart of an extremely busy urban area, we're undertaking one of the largest and deepest excavations ever in Hong Kong. to build a 4-story underground structure with the lowest level being located 30 meters below ground. The 11-hectare West Kowloon site area, which, as mentioned in the government's independent expert panel report, is approximately the size of 15 football fields. The main public area of the terminus incorporates a large atrium with a steel-framed station entrance building. The total construction area of the station, all of which is underground, is around 380,000 square meters, almost 2/3 of the floor area of Terminal 1 at Chap Lai Kok Airport. MTR's role in the delivery of the Express Rail Link project is as project manager to oversee the design, construction, and commissioning into service of the project. Our role and responsibility as project manager are embedded in so-called entrustment agreements with the government. There are 2 entrustment agreements. The first relates predominantly to design and site investigation, whilst the second, the so-called EA2, entered into in January 2010, predominantly relates to our role to oversee the construction and commissioning of the project, including the procurement and oversight of contracts with third parties. Under both entrustment agreements, which require MTR to use our project management systems, we are to carry out our services as project manager with reasonable skill and care, and are to use our best endeavors to bring the project forward, as well as to provide regular updates and progress reports to government. Under EA2, both the entrustment program and the entrustment costs are estimates, which may be subject to modifications in accordance with the contract. Before construction commenced, site investigation works were carried out as far as possible. In particular, the site investigation that was undertaken at the West Kowloon terminus not only complied with government guidelines, but also exceeded industry norm. Whilst delays are common for complex construction projects such as the Express Rail Link, throughout the construction, we did everything we could to reduce the effects of any delay. As highlighted by various independent experts who have looked into the Express Rail Link delay, many issues have impacted the construction program, including challenges which were identified but proven to be much more serious than anticipated, such as unfavorable ground conditions and the acute labor shortage in the local construction industry. In addition, other key contributors of delay include issues with our tunnel boring machines, the TBMs, and a fast-track front end and late site processions. To overcome these issues, we instructed the contractors to carry out a large number of delay recovery measures. And with good results achieved by some of these remedial measures, we became too optimistic on the overall timetable to complete the project. Eventually, continuing delays in several critical contracts meant that the original project completion date could not be achieved. Although the challenges and delays on individual contracts were well communicated to government, over-optimism led to a belief that the original overall project completion date could still be met. From the Express Rail Link events of last year, and taking the recommendations of the independent board committee of our board of directors, we have, over the past year, introduced enhancements to strengthen our monitoring and reporting of the project, including the following. Firstly, we have established the Capital Works Committee at board level to improve monitoring of the construction of new projects and to extend more support to the project teams. In addition, to strengthen corporate governance, the MTR board has also established the Risk Committee. We have implemented improved internal project reporting processes and mechanisms within the project team, as well as to the Executive Committee, the Capital Works Committee, the board, and to government. We have also enhanced external reporting to the Legislative Council. We have established enhanced communication channels with government and also with senior management of key contractors. And we have reviewed the report by the independent expert panel appointed by government, and we will support government in any follow-up actions which they may require. Recently, after extensive and detailed review and taking into account the IBC experts' methodology, a revised program and cost estimate has been submitted to government. With the permission of government, we have reported the details of this review to the LegCo Transport Panel's Subcommittee on Matters Relating to Railways on 3rd July 2015. The project is now over 70% complete. While there are still challenges in the remaining construction works, we will, as always, continue to use our best endeavours to deliver the project according to the revised timetable. The corporation's project team is highly professional and experienced and has a proven track record in the construction and commissioning of new railway projects. The hard-working women and men in the team continue to do their utmost and put in tremendous efforts to overcome challenges. We work promptly and responsibly with the project contractors in an effort to mitigate delays when they occur, looking at what is in the best interest of the project, both from the schedule and cost perspective. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful for the advice which honourable members of the Legislative Council and the public have given us. We will continue to work with government to deliver the Express Rail Link in a timely and cost-effective manner. Thank you, Chairman and members.
Mr.
Leung, I believe the Select Committee understands this to be a very big and complicated project. Are you going to give a copy of your opening remarks to the Select Committee for reference? Yes. The MTRCL also submitted 5 documents: MTR1, MTR2, MTR3, MTR1(C), MTR2(C). Do you formally present these to the Select Committee as evidence?
I
want to remind members, according to the work, procedure and practice of the Select Committee, in an open hearing, members should ask questions to verify facts related to the investigation. No, you should not make comments. You should not make speeches. I will rule whether your question will be relevant to the terms of reference of the Select Committee, and I also have the discretionary power to rule whether a question is a follow-up question and should be allowed to be put. And also, time limit. Every member will be given 10 minutes for questions and answers. First question for Mr. Leung. According to the annual report of the MTRCL 2014 and also paragraphs 3 and 4 of your statement, you joined the MTRCL in February 2002 as financial director. And starting from 2002, you have been a member of the executive board, and in May 2008, your title was changed to Finance and Business Development Director, and you began to be responsible for the business development on the mainland of China and overseas. And then you became the Deputy CEO in July 2012. And then starting from August 2014, you started to act as CEO, and you were formally appointed as CEO and a member of the board on March the 16th, 2015. Can you briefly describe to this Select Committee that as a member of the senior management of MTRCL as well as the member of the executive committee, what do you think lead to the delay in the project? We have listened to your opening remarks already, so please be succinct in your response to this question.
Chairman had mentioned back from May 2008, I was appointed as Finance and Business Development Director of MTR with responsibility for the financial management of the corporation. And from July 2012, I was then appointed as Deputy Chief Executive Officer with responsibility.
Mr. Leung, you really don't need to repeat all these. Just give us a very succinct reply, please.
For the delay in the construction of the Express Rail Link, I think well highlighted in the various reports of our independent board committee and their experts, as well as in the IEP report. These reasons were also highlighted in our paper to the Legislative Council back in May of last year, as well as more recently, early July of this year. In summary, there are a number of factors that led to the delay. A number of these factors relate to the overall situation and circumstances affecting the whole construction industry. One of these factors which relates to the whole construction industry is the shortage of labor. As highlighted in the IBC report, overall, across our then 5 new rail projects, there's a shortage of roughly 20% in terms of labor. A second factor that is highlighted in the IBC and various other reports is the difficult ground conditions. Although there was significant site investigation done prior to the commencement of construction activities, when one is working underground, there is always, unfortunately, the very, very significant probability of the ground condition being much worse than originally envisaged. This happened with the Express Rail Link, and it has also happened in a number of our other rail projects as well. A third factor that was highlighted by our IBC expert is the relatively short front-end preparation of the project. A fourth factor that was highlighted by our IBC experts, as well as commented on by the IEP experts, is the very complicated utility diversions, particularly in the West Kowloon terminus site. As you know, there are myriads of utilities under Jordan Road and in that area. In the construction of that West Kowloon terminus, the diversion of that utility needs to be done very prudently and carefully to ensure that there's no disruption to utility services. The lack of labor, the shortage of labor, also was a contributing factor to a further cause, which is the low productivity rate that we saw across virtually all the contracts in the Express Rail Link, project.
I would like to ask a follow-up question. We know that MTRCL has appointed a panel of 6 NEDs to set up this IBC. They have produced a report in 2 parts, and there are 2 independent professionals to assist them on, I believe, technical matters. For these 2 independent professionals, are they providing service for a fee, or are they providing the pro bono work?
The 2 experts and their assistant, in fact, there was 3 experts. The 2 experts and their assistant, who was the 3rd expert, were paid a fee by MTR. However, the experts were chosen by the independent board committee of MTR.
係明白。咁就我想問問就係、
Noted, and I think you agree that all the directors of the corporations, whether executive or non-executive, they all bear a fiduciary duty towards the corporation, and they should act in the best interests of the corporation. And I believe you can confirm this, that this should be what the directors do.
係咁嗱，咁我想問一問就係嗰
In the statement, two reports are mentioned. One is the IBC report, and the other is the IEP report. The IEP is appointed by the CE. We know that on the IEP we have Mr. Justice Hartman and two overseas experts on the board, on the panel rather. I want to point out that if we compare the IEP report to IBC report, the IEP report raised rather sharp criticism or sharper criticism. And you have referred extensively to the IBC report. But you have made no reference to the IEP report contents. Can you please explain why?
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, the IEP report also has made reference in their report to the IBC experts, and I believe that they have also noted that the recommendations from the IBC experts are very much in line with and in accordance with the IEP experts' recommendations as well. Chairman, we have, as members know, cooperated fully with government and the IEP experts in their compilation and in their compilation of the IEP report. We have given our views to government on the IEP report. There are areas where we take a different view from the IEP report.
就所以你就比較少提過。
So that's why you rarely refer to the IEP report in your statement. You have fully accepted the IBC report. Is that the case?
In the IEP report, there is a factual annexure from PricewaterhouseCoopers. I think most of the facts in that factual annexure we accept as being factually correct.
明白。咁對於嗰個
As regards the CE-appointed IEP's report, in terms of the contents, what I know, their conclusions might not be agreeable to you, but in terms of the factual, fact-finding aspect, you have no disagreement or objection. So the MTRCL has not been wrong in any way by the IEP. Can I put it like that?
The facts as stated in the factual annexure from PricewaterhouseCoopers, in my view, are factually correct. There may be different interpretation of some of those facts.
明白。
Dr. Lo Wai Kuo. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the IEP report, I'm referring to 7.4, paragraph 7.4 of the IEP report. It said that the benchmarking should involve some quantitative analysis concerning the risk and cost. With regard to this recommendation, has the MTRCL done any risk assessment to take into account unfavorable ground conditions or other unforeseen or unforeseen difficulties, and also how such risks may affect the project construction time and the budget. If it has done so, please tell us the details.
喺技術上咧
Also, technically, can you cite some examples regarding the underground conditions at West Kowloon Terminal, the excavation of the soil there will be massive, and you also need a lot of the steel materials for the superstructure. The MTRC, or has the MTRC reported to the government about all the difficulties and challenges involved? My third question, for the ground condition, as Mr. Lincoln Leung, in answer to the chairman's question, said, is one of the factors causing the delays. So in this regard, is it the case that the site investigation work wasn't done comprehensively enough? Fourth, as indicated in paragraph 31 of the statement, the completion time would be 5.5 years from 2001 to 2015 August. So this completion time, as indicated in the IBC report, para 1.26, the arrangement is really too ambitious. Perhaps I put all these questions first. Mr. Leung.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for those questions. The first question, which relates to the IEP report and highlighted in paragraph 7.4 of the IEP report regarding the so-called quantitative risk assessment. I firstly say that our project team and MTR in our projects works, we have detailed procedures in place to identify risk relating to both the project program, the so-called schedule, as well as to project costs. This is all under our so-called PIMS project management system, which, as members also know, is a system that under the entrustment agreement we have to use. Our procurement and contracts colleagues and their management and documentation, respectively, also includes risk assessment. We consider that these risk assessment, risk mitigation measures are generally fit for purpose in managing these major projects such as the Express Rail Link. And in fact, these risk mitigation processes have been used for a number of projects previously. We have in place we had in place and continue to use a qualitative risk assessment, which is part of our overall risk assessment process.
Are you done? Dr. Low. Perhaps Mr. Leung might wish to address the remaining questions. He had addressed the risk assessment only.
Answer the Honourable Member's other questions as well. The second question is with regards to reporting to government. As members know, there is very extensive reporting to government. The processes and the meetings are well set out in the various documents which are in the public domain, the IEP report, government's IEP report, as well as our IBC report. The difficulties with ground conditions, the difficulties on individual contracts, the delays on individual contracts, is well documented that all these are well reported to government in these various meetings, as both formal and ad hoc meetings, which have been taking place throughout the period from the start of construction or from the signing of the entrustment agreement for the Express Rail Link. Chairman, perhaps I can go to the Honourable Member's third question. The third question is with regards to site investigation and the adequacy of site investigation. Chairman, as I have mentioned, we did extensive site investigation prior to the commencement of construction. The site investigations were done both at the West Kowloon terminus as well as, to the extent possible, along the alignment of the tunnel. I mentioned that at the West Kowloon terminus, we were drilling boreholes for site investigation at a spacing of 14.4 meters apart. This spacing is in line with the relevant government guidelines, and in fact, the spacing is much closer and therefore of a higher standard than the industry norm. However, as members are aware and highlighted in both the IEP and the IBC reports, due to vertical formation of the bedrock at the West Kowloon terminus site, even with closely spaced boreholes, it is still possible and likely that weak seams of rocks and subsurface boulders will be missed. Also, variable rock head in several locations resulted in excessive rock having to be removed to meet the requirements of the rock quality for the panels on which the West Kowloon terminus diaphragm walls were built. I would further add, Chairman, that in the West Kowloon terminus site, because of constraints of the site, there were areas, and relatively sizable areas in some cases, where site investigation cannot be done. A good example of this is the area under Jordan Road. Because of the very busy traffic on Jordan Road, there was very little possibility of closing the road for site investigation. Also at the golf course, the old golf course, we did site investigation in the car parking areas. In addition to the site investigations that were done at the West Kowloon terminus site, we also did quite extensive site investigation along the tunnel alignments. There's 20-odd kilometers of tunnel from West Kowloon to the border of Shenzhen. That site investigation used both drilling of holes along the alignment, as well as a relatively a technique that is not commonly used in Hong Kong. It is a horizontal. Drilling holes would be vertical. It is a horizontal methodology whereby using horizontal drilling, we were testing the rock formation, particularly under two mountain areas. So in terms of the work done on the tunnels, there were 400 boreholes drilled, and for the 1 kilometer of tunnels under the hills, the mountains, we did this so-called, use this unconventional approach of horizontal and directional site investigation. So, Chairman, that answers the third question. The fourth question was on the original schedule. Chairman, I would firstly say that there was a significant amount of work done back in 2009 and prior to that, looking at the schedule, the timetable to complete the project in 2015, in 2015. There were many experts involved in looking at that timetable. The final conclusion was the timetable to complete in 2015 was tight, but it was a doable, it was an achievable timetable. Thank you, Chairman.
If I may, Chairman, if I may follow up. There is a follow-up question, and then I'll put new questions that I think would be important to gathering evidence. Mr. Leung made the point a moment ago that the MTRC in this project has been using this quantitative risk assessment, and I'm wondering whether details can be made available to us. Since that you have been doing this, it would be difficult for you to submit all the quantitative risk assessment reports. It will not be realistic. But when you conducted the quantitative risk assessment, did you leave some flexibility there? Perhaps some details can be made available to us. Is it okay? My next question also relevant, Mr. Chairman. There was a mention of a lot of the advanced work, the assessment, and so on, and they have to do with the agreement. Paragraph 40, 42 of the statement in the IEP IBC report, schedule 3.12 or 3.13. There is a mention that for the advanced work, the period is shorter, and it took 21 months for the period, 37 months shorter than the international norm. Now, for this Hong Kong section, 21 months of advanced work, do you think that it is grossly insufficient? Now, that has to do with the site investigation work that I referred to. So the timing, do you think that the timing is too short, too insufficient? The other question I'd like to put is this. In your statement, paragraph 32, you mentioned that since the project is so complicated, there is a risk of delay, and the second entrustment agreement doesn't impose an absolute obligation to complete the project by August 4th, 2015. So in this entrust agreement, does it say that if the company cannot complete before 2015, would there be any penalty or any consequences? Does it mean that before the commencement of the project, the MTRC anticipated delays and would not be able to complete the project by August 2015? Was it anticipated at the time? Mr. Leung, please.
Thank you, Honourable Member, for those questions. On the first question, can I supplement and to say that on the schedule, on the timetable, what we use in terms of our risk management before last year, up to 2014, would be a qualitative, not a quantitative risk assessment from a timetable perspective. We do use quantitative assessment in terms of cost. I'd just like to supplement that, Chairman. As I mentioned, the PIM system, which incorporates this qualitative risk assessment, has been reviewed by a number of experts back in 2009. I won't repeat what the experts have said. The experts' comments, which include comments of saying that the PIMS is robust, is well documented in the IEP and the IBC reports. So the risk management processes are embedded in the MTR processes that were reviewed back in 2009. Chairman, perhaps I can go to the member's second question, which once again talks about site investigation. I would say that, as highlighted just now, there were extensive site investigation done in that preliminary period. In fact, once again, as highlighted, the site investigation was based on, was meeting guidelines of the government, and in fact, even the holes are drilled closer, so at a higher standard than what is industry norm. Using the horizontal and directional site investigation for the tunnels is something which is rather unique, and not many entities would use that. But we did use that for the purposes of our site investigation. So I would say that in terms of site investigation, there was a very significant amount of work done. With regards to the member's third question, which is on our project management, the MTR, we take our responsibility as project manager under the entrustment agreement very, very seriously. And the responsibility as well as the liability of the project manager, MTR, is well set out in the various public documents, and in particular the IEP document with regards to our role and our responsibility. So, Honourable Member Chairman, I have not much to add beyond what is in the IEP report on that.
Chairman, 2 quick points to follow up. I've heard from Mr. Leung earlier. He referred to something not about quantitative risk assessment, but anyway, some risk assessment was done. I was asking questions about details that would establish the relationship between the risk assessment findings and the timetable. And Mr. Leung hasn't really directly answered my other question, and that is under EA2. Is there anything in EA2 saying that if the MTRCL cannot complete the project by the 4th of August 2015, there will be some penalty or consequence? Can I be given a direct reply by Mr. Leung? Mr. Leung, can you give us something in writing? Or can you also answer the question on consequences of failing to deliver by the 4th of August 2015?
I would just like to respond to that question. Under the entrustment agreement, as members are aware, both the schedule, the 2015, the August 2015 schedule, as well as the estimated costs, these are estimates, and I'll stress the word estimates. There are provisions in the entrustment agreement, and these provisions are well highlighted in government's IEP experts report in the factual annexure that have provisions. The entrustment agreement has provisions to amend and adjust these estimates. So when the entrustment agreement was entered into in 2010, it was on the basis of MTR being a project manager with an estimated, with an obligation to use best endeavors as a project manager based on an estimated timetable and an estimated cost to complete. There are provisions to adjust that.
That's understood. Mr. Leung, can you provide the information required by Dr. Low later?
Consult with my project colleagues on this.
Please communicate with our secretary over this. Mr. Tony Chair, Deputy Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. The completion date of XRL was set as August 2015. According to information available to us, delays happened almost immediately after it has started. According to 122I, the former CEO, Mr. Wada and Mr. T.C. Cho, and other members, on the 12th of April 2014, they were informed by the former projects director about the delay. Previously, they were informed that the delay would mean that the project could only be completed in 2017. Was the board of the MTRCL aware of the delays also in April last year? Did someone report too late to the board? So can we say that at that point the board wouldn't be in the know in any way? Mr. Leung?
Thank you for that question. As well highlighted in the IBC and the IEP report, the first time the board of MTR knew about the delay was in April 2014, after the announcement of the delay in the public domain.
主席，咁我想跟
If that's the case, I have a follow-up question. So the board was not aware of the delay until the 12th of April 2014. But there were some delays, hiccups prior to that. Mr. Leung, according to the EA, between the MTRCL and the government, best endeavors will be required on the part of the MTRCL to complete the contract, and also it should be done within the cost estimate. So the board was suddenly aware, after work had commenced for so many years, that the delay would mean that the completion date would be 2017. So can you still say that the MTRC did its best, did the best endeavors been done? So the question is, did you really do your best? And is it really that because there will be no consequence for the MTRCL for any delay, so you simply don't have the will, the determination to monitor the progress, and you just let some managers or people in charge to do whatever they want?
Member, for that question. I would firstly say that MTR, throughout the Express Rail Link project, we have been using our absolute best endeavors. We have done everything we possibly can for the Express Rail Link project and continue to do so. We have right now 750 very hard-working women and men who every day are working hard to deliver this project based on the revised schedule and in the most cost-effective manner. In fact, the professionalism and the expertise of the MTR team in their approach to the Express Rail Link project was well highlighted by both the IEP in their report as well as the IBC. I think our IBC experts complemented the high-level professionalism and the high-level professionalism of our colleagues overseeing the XRL project, and the fact that they were not just working hard but doing their utmost to overcome difficulties as those difficulties arise. In fact, the IEP expert, the government's own IEP experts, commented that the MTR management of individual contracts was, I use the word, and this is their word, exemplary. It was exemplary. The Express Rail Link is a very complex, large, complex project. The complexity, I think we have highlighted highlighted a number of times throughout my introductory remarks, as well as in our written statements. Throughout that project, as I mentioned, the team were doing their utmost to catch up with delays. The individual delays of contracts need not mean an overall delay in the project. The individual delays in particular contracts was well communicated to all concerned, including government, in the regular meetings with government. At all times, the project...
Mr. Leung, I think you should give a direct reply to Mr. Chair's question. I don't think he's querying whether your team did its best, but he was wondering whether the board's attitude was such that there was no serious monitoring of the progress. He was referring to the board.
The board took their responsibility, their governance responsibility, extremely seriously. There are regular reporting from the project's director and the previous project's director to the board at board meetings, where updates of the progress of Express Rail Link were discussed. In addition, there were half-yearly updates by the former project's director on the progress of, amongst others, the Express Rail Link project. And in fact, there was well documented in the IBC report questions and comments which were made by board members as they followed the progress of the Express Rail Link.
主席，咁就我諗有。
I think one thing is clear: the board of MTRCL was only aware of the delay on this 12th of April 2014. It was only then that the board knew that the new completion day would be 2017. So that's the reporting mechanism, and there's also the executive committee. And the executive committee was only aware of the delay a few days before the public did so. Was the committee kept in the dark previously?
With regards to the executive committee, as members are aware from the reports and my written statement, the executive committee is a committee predominantly of the executive directors, plus one or two other members.
I want to get a simple and straightforward answer. Did the committee only knew about the delay and the news completion day of 2017 a few days before the public?
BC report, the answer is yes, the executive committee, apart from the project's director, only knew about the delay back in April of 2014.
OK， 唔該梁生。主席，我想跟進呢就。
Thank you, Mr. Leung. Chairman, in Mr. Leung's submission and in his open introductory remarks, he mentioned that the XRL project is complicated. And I've heard a number of factors quoted leading to the delay. The geological conditions, underground utilities that have to be relocated or removed, and also the labor shortage in the construction industry, and then on some of the sites there's been some delays in the handing over procedure. When you set the schedule, the timetable, and the cost estimate, you were aware of the relevant factors and principles, but the details will only come later. And of course, the geological conditions might be more complicated than expected. And there were delays in certain contracts under the XRL project. And since the four factors you've referred to would affect the completion date and the cost, under the EA, After the signing of E8, what did you do? What action did you take in respect of the 4 factors to minimize the risks or to clarify certain uncertainties, including the geological conditions, the underground conditions? What have you done so that we will all think that you have done your best? You have that best endeavors have been exercised to meet the completion date and the cost?
No, thank you for that question. As the honourable member rightly said, it is a very complex project, and there were a lot of preliminary work done, including site investigation done. The honourable member mentioned the ground condition difficulties, the interface difficulties as amongst the difficulties causing the delay. I would firstly say that the team, in their diligent work to overcome these difficulties and challenges, a number of so-called delay recovery measures were instructed by the team to the contractors to try to overcome these delays when they occur. The successes of these delay recovery measures, of a number of these delay recovery measures, are well highlighted in my written statement as well as in the public documentation. It is my belief that because of, and as I mentioned, because of particularly the early successes of these delayed recovery measures, that led the team and individuals in the team to become optimistic and perhaps over-optimistic on the ability to achieve the overall program and timetable.
主席，我想問一問
Chairman, if I may. A moment ago, Mr. Leung mentioned all these remedial work. Can you make available more details regarding what exactly you have done for the ground conditions, for instance? At the early stage of work or of investigation, you encountered the challenges, but in the course of work, did you take any remedial action for you to get to grips with the ground condition and also the underground utilities and so on? Will Mr. Leung please give us more details regarding the measures that have been undertaken by the MTRC to deal with the problems?
Chairman, in fact, there are a number of examples, both in the paper which was submitted to the Legislative Council in May of last year, as well as in my written comments. I would supplement that, for instance, a number of these measures, as one of our delay recovery measures, there were so-called HPALs, which were driven into the ground. Unfortunately, those
主席，我諗即係如果係之前提。
Well, Chairman, for the information that has been provided, there is no need to repeat it. If Mr. Leung has anything else that he likes to supplement, the ground condition would be an important factor. We all understand that there were unanticipated situations. Maybe there were problems with the sample collection and so on. Did you take any remedial action to make sure that you would be able to comply with the EA? If you have, please give us some of the information. If not, or if you have provided all the information, then it would be fine. Thank you. Any supplementary information or papers that you'd like to supplement?
Member, can I consult our projects team and come and revert to the Secretariat? There were many.
Not the report, but the ground condition investigation, any remedial measures. In terms of the ground condition and all the possible delays caused by the ground condition and the documents there. Next, please. Perhaps you might wish to liaise with the Secretariat of the Select Committee, please. Thank you. Mr. Pt1 next. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to put a short question for short answer. the board, in this XRL incident, it was pretty late for the board to realize the situation. If we're not having the entrustment agreement, now for other projects, is the board acting like they did with regard to the SRL? They do not know whether there would be any overruns of the costs and so on. My question is, in managing the XRL, the MTRC board got the information. Would it be any different to the situation with regard to other projects?
Firstly, I would say that MTR treats the Express Rail Link with the equal degree of diligence and oversight as any other of MTR's projects. The reporting to the board, the reporting to the executive committee uses the same process and procedures. Of course, with the so-called service concession projects, being the Express Rail Link and the Sha-Tin Central Link, there were also amendments to those procedures to take into account of the requirements of government. But the diligence, the oversight, the responsibility over the Express Rail Link project is the same as all the other MTR projects. It was a very significant degree of oversight.
我想澄清返就係
I'd like to clarify this, if I may. In this entrustment agreement, we keep hearing the term delays. What about the cost overruns? It doesn't seem to be a matter of concern to the board. Now, my question is, for other MTRC projects, is or does the board adopt a similar attitude regarding cost overruns as well as delays? Mr. Leung.
I can say that the board is given the same type of information on all projects, be they service concession projects under entrustment agreements, or be that projects using any other models, for instance, the South Island Line or Kwun Tong Line extension. The information and the discussion would be at that same level.
OK，
So it means that in terms of XRL, the board would adopt the same attitude.
From my attendance at board meetings, yes, it is the same degree of diligence, the same degree of reporting, the same degree of assessment.
可唔可以提供相類？
Can you provide us with the reporting information with regard to other projects for comparison purposes?
即係類似嘅
Of other similar projects in terms of reporting documents. What specific documents? Mr. Leung mentioned that the information that the board obtains would be the same in terms of XRL or any other projects undertaken by the MTRC. I understand that. Are you seeking the documents of other projects? Well, just for comparison, you can just pick any line, like the South Island line, for instance, comparing it with the XRL. The information that the board obtains, would it be the same? Mr. Leung, please.
Chairman, my question, can I seek a ruling from Chairman on whether the disclosure of information relating to other lines, non-Express Rail Link lines, have relevance for this committee?
係有關嘅，因為佢
Yes, it is relevant because any other matters can be very broad. Now, the honourable member is asking about the cost overruns and delays. Will there be any similarities in terms of treatment? He's like to make a comparison. You don't have to produce all the documents. As you said, you have the PIMS system, the PIMS system for internal control and management. For other projects, would you adopt this PIMS system for any other projects that you undertake?
correct, Chairman. The other projects will use PIMS and the other MTR systems. As I mentioned, with the service concession projects, the Express Rail Link and the Sha-Tin Central Link, the entrustment agreements add further requirements in terms of reporting.
係胡志偉議員，我覺得係即係如果問
Mr. Wu, if you're asking documents for other projects, then it may go beyond the scope of our inquiry. I do appreciate your question. Your question is within the scope, but the seeking of other documents, it may go beyond the scope. I'd like to seek your ruling, Chairman. Mr. Leung repeatedly said that the board would obtain information in the same way for XRL as any other projects that they undertake. So I'd like to find out whether these can be backed up by the documents at the board. I think the question has been answered regarding the PIMS or the internal control. They have the PIMS system managing the projects. The same can be said about XRL. There is a difference. XRL is under an entrustment agreement, and under the agreement, the budget overruns. If there is a need for additional costs, it would be for the government to pick up the additional costs. But for projects that are owned or that are built by the MTRC, it would be the board that will take up the responsibility. Now, Mr. Leung is telling us that the information that the board obtains would be exactly the same. So the board, because of this entrustment agreement, which says that for cost overruns, it would be for the government to pick up the tabs, and I'm wondering whether they are managing the project as diligently. Well, Mr. Leung, can you give us some supplementary information regarding the management of contracts or projects in terms of XRL and any other projects that you undertake, not under the EA model? Can you give us some comparative information in writing, please?
Chairman, perhaps in answer to the honourable member's question, I would firstly say that, as we mentioned, the PIM system and the MTR other systems is a system which has been very successful in delivering rail projects in the past. It's a system that we use for all our projects, have been using that for 20 plus years. We continue to use that for our existing projects, as Chairman rightly said. This PIM system was further audited, reviewed by a number of third parties, both appointed by government and MTR prior to the entrustment agreement being entered into. And this, during the course of the XRL project and continuing on, this PIM system is audited by a number of parties.
We don't have to go into that. That you're seeking extra information of the board. I don't have any ruling on this. You can seek the information. You don't need my ruling. They can choose not to make available the information. If you ask me whether it is relevant, I think your question is relevant, but the documents that you are seeking may not be absolutely relevant. At least they should give us a paper in writing in terms of cost control and delays, and they would adopt the same attitude towards all the projects. Well, in terms of PIMS, you can tell us that you have the same system for all projects, and there may be differences in terms of applicability for different projects. If there are differences in terms of applicability, you might highlight them for Mr. Wu's benefit, please, in writing.
Chairman, perhaps I could also highlight that the PIM system, the system we use overall, is the same system. However, as members are aware, back in 2009, government had appointed a third party called Lloyd's Register, who have given some views on further oversight which government requires on the Express Rail Link and subsequently the Sha-Tin Central Link project. What I was referring to is this even additional oversight which is on top of what we would ourselves be doing for our own projects. So this is in addition to the systems and processes we use for our existing project. It's all the same PIMS system and processes.
係，
多謝。
委員。
唔緊要啦，我諗都係問唔到㗎啦。
That's okay. I don't think I will get anything more than that. Paragraph 44 states that the shared completion date and the cost estimate are estimates. There's no absolute obligation. But in paragraph 89, that the EA may be modified by agreement, or the adjusted by the corporation in the event of delay caused by one or more delaying events specified under the second EA. In paragraph 89, it said that the EA can be modified, but there are two possibilities only. First, agreed by the corporation and the government, or in accordance with the EA, some acceptable reasons will be allowed.
As highlighted, I think, by the IEP report, the modification can be by either mutual consent or by modification by notification from MTR to government after certain events have occurred.
我想確認翻就係、
Let me confirm this. The delays or cost overrun that we are now having have not been the subjects of any agreement between the government and the MTRCL.
To the Honourable Member and Chairman, that MTR's objective is the same as government. We aim to complete this project as quickly as possible and in the most cost-effective manner. Our objective is exactly the same. Secondly, we have only given our updated cost to complete and program to complete the most recent updated estimate of the cost to complete and program to complete to government at the end of June. That was only 15 days ago, just over 2 weeks ago. As Mr. Secretary, Mr. Secretary Zhang had said, government will be reviewing both our latest estimate of cost to complete and program to complete, and I'm sure they'll be coming back to us with further questions, which we will, of course, answer as quickly as possible.
主席，我淨係想確認翻就係咪
I want to just confirm that the proposed estimates now we are seeing have not been agreed to by either the government or the RDO. So the cost overruns and the measures to catch up and the cost-related factors have not been agreed to by the government?
With the entrustment agreement, we have sent in the required notices to government at the end of June, on the 30th of June. As highlighted and as indicated, government had said that they will need time to review those latest estimates.
佢再重複翻係冇咁嘅協議嘅。
So I think it has been repeated that no such agreement is in existence now. Mr. Michael Tin, Mr. Fang, I was the one to raise my hand this morning. Are you going to set a precedent that we can do our bookings in advance through telephone? Well, I know you went in you raised your hand at about 9:05. That's before the hearing. And then even if we do that, Mr. Michael Tin was before you. Well, do you want to set a precedent whereby we can register by phone in advance? I already said when I entered that I would like to raise questions. Well, that's before the hearing started. We only count the order after the hearing has started. I think the order should be decided by the order of the time when the secretary is approached. So I'm number 5, according to the order you have ruled. Well, it was an official procedure. Well, I sat here, I entered the room punctually, and when you and the secretary entered the room, I already indicated to you that I want to put questions to them. Mr. Fan, I have a question for you. When did the hearing was the meeting already in progress? Well, you said there would be 4 members who would ask questions first in the May part of the examination. Well, do you want to set a precedent that I can somehow register my intention before the next hearing? Well, in order not to waste time, I would defer to Mr. Fan. I just want to know that there will be a break. I would like to know how the order is decided. Well, Mr. Michael Tin, and then it will be you. I have 6 or 7 questions of Mr. Leung. I just want to get some brief answers, or sometimes a yes or no would do. According to the original schedule, 3 weeks later, the XRL project would have completed. But then we have delays, we have cost overruns. I believe it has to do with the mismanagement on the part of the MTRCL. According to your statement, you are trying to shed the responsibility of the MTRCL. Paragraph 32 says that there is always a risk of delay given the challenging and complex nature, and therefore under the second EA, there is no the EA does not impose an absolute obligation to complete the project by the 4th of August 2015. Is there an explicit clause or provision in the EA? Is that in black and white? There's no absolute obligation. Is that in the EA?
Just to respond to the honourable member, I think firstly, as highlighted by both the IBC and in fact the IEP commented that MTR's management of individual contracts was exemplary. The IBC also commented that the management of the Express Rail Link was undertaken in a very professional manner. With regards to the entrustment agreement, I would once again highlight that, and as highlighted in our written statements, both the cost to complete as well as the program are estimates in the entrustment agreement.
明白，即係冇。
So there's nothing in black and white. Does it mean that the MTRCL has an obligation to complete the project as scheduled instead of having one delay after another? And you shouldn't be using this term that there's no absolute obligation. And also for paragraph 40 to 44, talk about the fast track front end for project program. Then the former director in 2009, Mr. Bragg, said in 2009 that it was too tight, too compressed a timetable, and it would have to be completed in 2017, and the cost would be $80 billion. Was there such an estimate on the part of the MTR team back then? Yes or no?
I think in response to the honourable member, MTR's responsibility as project manager are well spelt out in the entrustment agreement, very clearly spelt out in the entrustment agreement. And of course, we take our obligations under the entrustment agreement.
梁生，我短問短答，我仲有其他問題。
I have other questions. I just wanted yes or no. answer. Was there such an estimate back then?
Estimated program to complete for 2015. Once again, as I have said before, this estimate was done based on advice from external third parties as well as a lot of processes and diligence. The timetable to complete by August 2015 initially, the estimated timetable was, as I've said before, tight but doable.
咁我想請問柏立行
So what about Mr. Black's departure when the project started, and then we in 2010, February 2010, we have Mr. Chow instead. Was it because Mr. Black knew that there would be delayed and he resigned because he didn't want to be held responsible for that?
Mr. Russell Black, who has, as you know, been with MTR many years, in fact retired from MTR. Mr. Russell Black has been instrumental in working with MTR and building many of our rail lines. Mr. Russell Black retired.
我想請問陳述書98段就
Paragraph 19(8) of the statement talk about Jacobs. Jacobs performed a total of over 250 audits between January 2010 and April 2014. According to Mr. Lau Ka-keung's submission, it's G9. It said that on the 12th of January 2010, a letter was sent to the MTRCL citing 3 critical observations concerning ground investigation. Can Mr. Leung provide the remarks to us? What are the 3 critical remarks? If not now, can you do it after the meeting? Mr. Leung?
Not a construction professional, and therefore these matters, which pertain very much to the construction activities, I need to consult with my colleagues on that.
OK 好，根據前路政處處長韋
According to Mr. Y.G. Singh, the former director of highways, and his supplementary information, paper G11, before the departure of Mr. White, the MTRCL did not advise the government that because of bad rocks in Kowloon, West Kowloon terminus, and that is before the signing of the EA2, the MPRCL was not aware of the unfavorable ground conditions that would lead to delays and cost overrun, and that is after the 12th of January that year. The government had not advised the government in any way about the problems with boring. Was it professional negligence or misconduct on the part of MTRCL?
Government that highlighted all the issues with regards to particular contracts. These were well highlighted to government in the regular meetings which had taken place from the signing of the entrustment agreements. Whatever issues, whatever delays were being encountered in individual contracts should be well highlighted in the monthly reports, which I understand span over 200 pages.
OK 文件59段
Paragraph 59 talk about the problems with contracts A10A, A10B, and A11A. Because of the fast-track front-end process, the design had to be changed. How many changes are we talking about to the 3 contracts? If you cannot provide the information to us, can you give us the information after the hearing?
Chairman, once again, as members are well aware, the Express Rail Link, and in particular the West Kowloon Terminus, is a very complicated and complex construction project. And with all these complex construction projects, it is not uncommon, in fact it is quite common, for contracts to be tendered when there is a stage of maturity reached in the development of the design. And that for the Express Rail Link, including the contracts that the Honourable Member mentioned, would have been the case.
但可唔可以喺會後提
Can you give us the information after the meeting, accurate data, a number of times things have been changed?
I would have to seek advice from my colleagues on this, if Chairman do not mind, and revert back to the Secretariat.
OK，
My sixth question, Highways Department provided information G2, Scheduled 1, the design started in 2009 May up to 2010 December. My question for Mr. Leung, can you confirm the information, whether it is accurate? If this is accurate, then 19 months were spent on the detailed design. Is it really a very tight timetable? How would you describe this 19 months of time? Is it too tight?
Thank you, Member, for that question. I think firstly I'd just repeat again that in complicated projects like this, it is not uncommon for contracts to be tendered after the design has reached a certain stage of maturity. I do not personally have information with regards to that particular design for that particular contract, Chairman.
最後一個技術問
Last technical question. The West Kowloon Terminal, for the different contracts, there are priorities. A11A, when tender was completed, A10, AB were not tendered for West Kowloon Terminal in terms of the different projects. Because of all the bunching together of the projects, has it caused any problem because of all the projects bunching together?
Chairman, once again, we use our system, which is a tried and tested system, our PIM system. Our PIM system looks at, and our project management system looks at each of the contracts as well as the interfaces between contracts. I believe the honourable members asking about the interfaces that would be dealt with in our construction processes.
好，唔該，我哋而家。
All right, let's take a break for 10 minutes. We'll come back in 10 minutes, 1:15, please. Thank you.